Hey, welcome back. All right, in this tutorial, we are going to add some more detail to that wall that we just made by adding the displacement map to our material. In the last tutorial, we made our material. We also modeled the simple rectangular wall. We added a bevel to it. Then we did the UV. So these last few tutorials have been kind of about modeling and making the model look good. And this is kind of the last step for that process. So let me go ahead and show you what it looks like and what I'm talking about with this demonstration. Okay, this wall right here does not have any displacement maps added to it, and this one does. Now, if we take a look at this wall, we get up close to it and look down along the side of it, you can see that it's very straight. It's nice and straight along the edges here, and if we look down the surface, it's very straight. From a distance, because of the normal map, it looks three-dimensional. But when we get up right on it, it's not so much. Now, when we look over here at this one has a displacement map to it. Let me select it. When we take a look at it, you can see that there's curves along the top. See how it kind of moves along with it on the sides there. And here, we also have some very distinct bump outs and bump ins for this because we're using the displacement map to create those. The displacement map is this map right here. And wherever it's black, we're going to have areas of the three-dimensional model be pushed inward, and wherever it's bright white, it's going to be pushed outward. And then, of course, the ones in between are going to be more of our smooth surface. Since this is a brick wall, it's not going to be really super crazy. It should mostly be like this, mostly kind of white, and kind of the same, because it should be a fairly smooth surface with the blocks being irregular on some around the edges. Okay? So, again, if I hit play with my character and roll right up onto it, there's a couple of spots where this is very, very obvious. And like right up in here, you can kind of see that we got some of these indents going in and out, giving it this appearance that this wall has a lot more detail and more interest to it. All right, so let's talk about the material and how we're going to do that. This is the material. All we've done is added these 4 nodes to it down here and changed the way some of the things were connected. We also, in the past, I added the specular. I'm not sure if we did that in the last tutorial. If not, easy to do. You can just right-click on any one of these empty nodes, promote it to a parameter, see it'll take its name, and then you can just put in the value. For a specular, I put in default 0.5. I'm going to delete this one because we don't need it. But anyway, so that's the process if you haven't done that. Okay. So let's go ahead and get this displacement map in because previously we didn't bring it in, I don't think. If we did, that's great, but I'm going off of memory here, which can be a bad thing at times. So remember, when we downloaded and unzipped our textures, they all went into our texture folder, and the rock wall displacement, this one right here, is the one we want. Simple enough. You can just have in your folder, click and drag, and drop this one in, okay? And it should just come in. Now, mine's already in here, so it didn't change anything. It just replaced it. Okay, so now let's go ahead and get our material. So this rock wall, the one that says no displacement, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate that one. You don't need to duplicate it. You can just open up your rock wall with the displacement here, but I'm going to use this one because I've already got one that says it. So I'm going to go ahead and Control D and duplicate that. And instead of no displacement, I'm going to call this rock wall. I'll just put example at the end so I know which one it is. Okay, I'm going to double click and open it up, and it should look like this. You should now have the specular, should have all of this here. Now, just hold on for a second. Let me go ahead and talk about something. I'm going to jump back over here onto these walls. Now, if I select this wall here, and actually try this one out here. So this is the same scale wall and everything. If I wanted to, we could potentially do something similar here. So I could just throw this onto here. But there's also an option here in modeling to go to deform, and we could use the displacement here, and we could displace it from here. And so by displacing it here, I could put that displacement map on here, but it's not going to come out right because we've UV'd these, so it's a much more complex model than just a simple plane or square that we would, or cube or something that we would throw into the game. This has its own UV, and we've modified that UV, and if we were to do this, it wouldn't come out exactly right. There are some settings we can kind of play around with and get it close, but it's just not going to come out as detailed as we'd want it to. So the reason why we're going to do this in the model is it makes it more, and I'll walk through it, but it makes it much more dynamic for us by using the material and setting up the material instance so that we can modify that material instance for each time we use it on a different model. So let's go ahead and talk about that as we go along. All right, so what we're going to do is, like I said, we're going to grab that displacement texture. I'm going to grab this one right here. And this displacement texture is a simple displacement texture. There are other types of textures out there. They may look something like this. They may be a kind of a yellowish color, and they may be called an ORD at the end. So that would be our ambient occlusion, roughness, and the D would be the displacement. If you're using an ORD, it's most likely going to be your red channel, and the way you can tell that, again, I guess I should have talked about that, is right here. When you go through these different channels, if you just click off all the channels and then click on the red, it should look something like that, and the other ones should have different colors on them. We're using a white and gray scale for this one, okay? So if you're using the exact same one I am, this will work, okay? Now, what we're going to do is we're going to pull out, we're going to get a couple different nodes. We're going to get one that's called an MX underscore, and it's a displacement map, okay? So this MX displacement is going to allow us to mix our normal map and our displacement map to give us a little bit more detail. We're not going to use this displacement plugin here because in Unreal Engine 5.6, we're actually going to be using world position offset to create the displacement. This one doesn't do what it says quite as well as it might seem. All right, so once we have this, we're going to go ahead and take our RGB and we're just going to plug it into displacement. We're going to take the RGB from our normal map and we're going to plug it in down here where it says normal. And then we're going to take this displacement, plug it into world position offset, and we're going to take the normal and we're going to plug it into normal right there. Now we need to get scale and position because it's really kind of messed some things up for us there, right? So the way we're going to get position is we're going to right click right here and we're going to type in UV layout. Okay, and so the UV layout to world space position. What this is going to do is this is going to find our UV and it's going to lay it in the world. So it's going to find it in the world, the way it's positioned in the world, and it's going to set it up on our material the way our model is in the world. And see, it kind of cleans some things up there. Now, the reason why we're doing this inside of the material is because we have this tiling. Remember, we're tiling these here in our material instance. We want to be able to adjust these tiles dynamically so that we can use this material. We just create a new material instance every time we want to put it on a new object, and we can rescale it so the blocks can be the same size from model to model to model without having to create an entirely new material every time we want to do that. So those pillars, for example, can have this same material, but we can use a different tiling number over here to scale it to match to what the wall is so that to the player, it looks like the same material is being used, right? Just like you might do in the real world. You're going to use the same blocks to build the pillars that you might be using for the wall. All right, so let's jump back to our material. So what we're going to do in order to be able to do that is we're going to take this and we're going to plug it into UVs just like we did up here. And then we're also going to take it and we're going to plug it into the texture coordinate down here as well. And this will tile it to match all of our other tiling here. So when it gets to UV, our UV will be automatically tiled for us the way it's supposed to be on the model in the world. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to get the displacement strength. That's the scale right here, the scale factor. And we're just going to right click on it. We're going to promote to parameter. I am going to change the name on this one so that it's a little bit more clear. This is going to be a displacement. And I'm going to call this strength, or you can call it scale, depending on how much you want to type. And I'm just going to give it a default of 1. Okay. Now, the other thing we want to double check, because this is pretty much the layout that we're going to have, but we got to make sure we have a couple things set here on our material so that they're correct. So let's make sure we got nanite turned on. Okay, we are using nanite. That's good. We also want to make sure we have enabled tessellation. So make sure your enabled tessellation is turned on. I just typed in displacement, but tessellation came up because it's part of this. And then for our world position max offset, we want to go ahead and give that a 5. We don't want to get too crazy with our displacement because, again, when we take a look at this displacement map, it's very subtle. If we get too crazy, it's going to break your model, because what we're doing is we're taking the vertices, basically, of this model, and we're moving them just a little bit. When we do that, if we move it too much, it breaks things, okay? Now, remember, also, by doing that, because we set these UVs up like this, right? So we have these UVs on here, and these UVs are connected together. Remember, we went to all that trouble to connect these together, except the ends aren't connected. I told you that's where a seam is going to be, right there, and also along the top here and the bottom. What that's going to do when we start using this displacement map is when we take a look at the very top, we're going to get these little kind of gaps right here. See how my edge is looking all kinds of funky now? They're not lining up. And if we look at it just right, we can kind of see the gap in there. We put them on the end because we're going to put these pillars here, or they're going to be butted up against another wall, depending on how you're going to build your world. But we're going to hide these. That way they won't be seen. And the rest of the seams are seamed together so there's no gap, so they won't come apart when we're pushing these vertices around, because they're going to move the edges and all those other things by using this displacement. So that's why we want to kind of be subtle when we're setting this amount down here. We don't want to really go more than 5 because it will break things. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and save that. Now, if you haven't already, this is where we're going to make the material instance. You should have made the material instance already, but that's okay. So right here, I'm going to right click on it if you don't remember, and I'm going to go ahead and click on, so right click, create material instance, and I'm just going to put a, I don't know why I always go the wrong side. I'm going to put an I right there after the M, just to let me know that this is a material instance, because I see that at the very front, and then at the very end, I'm just going to leave instance. I'm going to do a file, save all. Okay, and now I am going to double click and open that. And we can see right here, if you didn't have the specular before, we added that in. We're probably not going to change it, but this will give you the opportunity to come back and play around with the way the specular, the way the lighting is falling on your model, on your material. And then here's our, I misspelled it. Here's our displacement strength, my displacement strength. Okay, and it's set to default of 1. Also my tiling, right? So my original one, I had that set for 3 and 3, so I'm going to just go ahead and make this 3 and 3. Yours is probably still set that way because you're using the same material, right? So 3 and 3. And then in the world, if you applied it, nothing's really going to happen, okay? What we have to do is we're going to select it. And once we have it selected, we're going to go to our mesh. We need to remesh it. So click on remesh. And what should happen is you should get these little triangles that pop up. They should be visible like that. I am going to change this. I'm going to upscale this from whatever the default was, which was 5,000. I'm going to go ahead and make this something like 25,000. That's a lot. We're adding a lot of geometry to these, which is another thing that displacement does. So be cautious about how crazy you get. So we've added a lot more geometry from the original 5 or 6 or whatever it was. Maybe it was 13 or 14. But anyway, now we've added a lot more. And then we hit accept. Okay, so what that did is, if I go back in to it just real quick, I'm going to click remesh again. Don't do that, but I'm just going to show you. What we did is now we've got all these little tiny points that have been added in. So all of these vertices these positions, these vertices can be moved. This is what the computer is going to move around in the world to give us that appearance of displacement. So that's what the displacement is going to be creating, is by moving these around. Okay, so I'm going to hit cancel for this one because I already did it. So now I'm going to go ahead and apply this material instance. So I'm going to click on it, hit my little arrow down here, and I've applied it to this wall. Kind of hard to tell that I did it, but now if I take a look a little bit, because it's only set to 1 right now, there should be some minor, very subtle displacement done to it. Not really seeing a lot, but yeah, it did. So right here you can see my seam is split a little bit. It's very subtle. So if I go back in to my example here, save it, and I go back to my sandbox here, I'm going to go down, and down here where the displacement is, I'm going to just bump that up to 2. So I'm going to double what it's at right now. And basically got a little bit more detail to it. You can see here now I have some more curves. If I look up along the edge of that wall, I can see that I've got some curving happening a little bit, some spots. Very subtle, but it's got them. And you can see the bump out down here. Yeah, you can see that all kind of added that displacement. All right, so I'm going to save that. Now, if we got too crazy on it, so like if I hit like 10 or something like that, you can see that it's going to really displace it quite a bit. The wall also moves because we're changing our world position offset. Remember, we're using that node. So if it moves a little bit on you, you may need to reposition it in the world where you want it to be, okay? But yeah, because I did 10, it really moved quite a bit, and it's getting kind of funky looking. You might get away with some higher numbers, but by the way we set up the material, because what we've done here is we went out, we got the UV for the model this material is being used on, and we've set it up so that it tiles the same as the rest of the material. And then we've blended it together with the displacement and the normal using some sort of strength, a displacement strength. And then we've modified both the normal and the world position offset to give us a better looking 3D position. And that's it. So I'm going to change this back to, although 10 is kind of working, but it does kind of do this weird kind of droopy thing down here. You can play around with it until you get the right number. If 5 is too low for you for your default, you can go in and change it until you get the look that you want. Now, some more severe maps. Some more severe maps, so that if they have a lot more movement to them and you have more displacement, you might be able to change the numbers and get more of an effect. But just remember, the more that you push it, the more it's going to deform your model, okay? And some of the lighting is also going to look a little funky because it's calculating light and shadows off of, real-time shadows off of the deformation that you did here, but it's also using some of the default position and size or layout of the model to help with the calculations of some of the lighting. So it may look a little funny when you start messing around with that. Just be aware of that as well. Okay, you may have to play with the lighting, you may have to adjust things. Okay, so that's it for this tutorial. It was kind of quick, and hopefully you got everything out of it that you needed. This is gonna add the detail to your game that you want, and you're able to use displacement maps. If you have any questions or you have any problems, please hit me up in the comment section down below. Don't forget to like this tutorial, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. There'll be more stuff coming out, both on this game and other things for Unreal Engine. All right, appreciate it, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for playing.